Pomegranate, cherries, and papaya? Are you nuts?
What?
Wooden sofa and cushions and soft tapestry on chairs? I thought they lived 200 years before Game of Thrones.
What?
Oh, wait, is this a historical critique?
I believe the producers think that we, the viewers, are stupid and we don't have the capacity to see all the wrong details in the show.
Oh my God.
They have dragons. This is absolutely fantasy.
In House of the Dragons, it is only about talk, 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 no substance. Big cold castles where they eat a lot of cooked food and have plenty of children.
That's actually not inaccurate.
Sometimes they fly dragons, a bad show. That was a 1-star review from IMDb. Hello and welcome to Spoilers Intended, a podcast about series and films. I'm Ryan, and joining me today in the Dragon Pit are two men that bent the knee and pledged loyalty to this podcast. I'm joined by Andrew.
Greetings, Sovereign.
And Steven.
I don't know how I feel about this idea that we bent the knee. I think
You pledged loyalty to this
It's the other way
podcast.
around.
Now, we did pledge loyalty to watching a lot of things that we don't enjoy.
Yes.
Truth.
Speaking of, for Andrew especially,
Well, we know Andrew's feelings on
today's
this, yeah.
episode is on House of the Dragon.
Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon.
Oh gosh. Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, Game of Thrones, House of the
You
Dragon.
gotta know where it's from.
We get it.
Yeah.
All right, we get it.
They gotta get it
We know
together.
what the hook was here.
Is that a copyright thing, I wonder?
Probably.
Who knows? Anyways, yeah, we're talking about, HBO's return to Westeros with House of the Dragon. But
Yeah.
before we get into all that, let's talk about what we've been watching.
Man, it's been a while since we've done one of these.
Yeah, let's just give a quick update on what we've been watching. Andrew, why don't you lead off? What have you been
Are you
watching?
sure you want me to start?
What does that mean? What have you been watching?
I
He does a
have
list.
a list.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'll start. Fine.
Yeah,
I mean,
how big is this list?
It's big enough.
He had to write it down to remember it.
Just fire off a few of them.
Yeah,
then. Go
but
for it.
no, I have all of them. But I'm going to give basically one sentence little tidbits here for each one.
Okay.
So clearly we're watching House of the Dragon, right?
Required reading.
Yeah, that is ending now, basically.
Right soon.
You're right now. Then we have Great British Bake Off, which is kind of a classic, happens every season.
Yeah.
And
British people pretend like they make food that we find interesting.
and they pronounce it wrong. Sandro
Oh,
is
boy.
probably my favorite for this season.
What'd they say?
The Pico de Gallo
Tacos.
and tacos.
Tacos.
So then I'm also watching Spy Family Season 2, which has been a great return. The new opening is fantastic by Bump of Chicken, and I love
I'm
it.
sorry, by who?
Bump of Chicken.
Wow. All right.
You know how chicken has bumps on it? It's like
It was Bump. I thought it was Thump.
Bump.
I
B-U-M-P.
like Thump better.
bump of
So
chicken.
then we're also watching My Hero Academia Season 6.
I didn't realize
which
that was still going on.
Yeah, it's like on episode like 120-ish.
Oh, gosh.
Okay.
Then we also have Bleach, the 1,000-Year Blood War.
Wait,
which,
really?
Which is it's the final arc of the manga that they did not animate back when Bleach was airing. So
I
they
didn't know Bleach still existed.
it came back with a vengeance. The animation is fabulous.
So is it a different studio?
No, it's the same studio,
Okay.
but the animation is just really good.
They just stepped it up.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, it's still Bleach. So if you didn't like Bleach initially, you're not going to like this.
Okay.
So then we have Mob Psycho Season 3. If you are unfamiliar with this show, it is the same creator that did One Punch Man.
Okay.
And it's kind of along the same lines for the first season. However,
Creator as
it
far
is
as manga or as far
manga,
as like,
yeah.
okay, yeah.
The writer, yeah.
The Mob Psycho delves a lot more into like characterization and character development than One Punch Man does.
Okay.
And it is fabulous. It's done by Studio Bones. Can't recommend it enough.
What's the premise of it?
Basically, you have Mob, who is a psychic.
Mhm.
And
I thought he was going to say Psycho. It's like, well, they gave it away.
and,
It's right
and
there in the
basically,
title.
he has he kind of has like a percentage of like up until when he gets to 100%, he kind of like goes crazy.
Okay.
And
A percentage of what?
his tolerance for things.
Rage bar.
I have the same thing.
Yeah,
but you don't get powers.
Yeah, I just
it's a good show. I totally recommend it.
You just get high blood pressure.
I
and
just get
meds.
hypertension and a headache.
So then I'm also watching Mobile Suit Gundam: The Witch from Mercury, which is a great intro if you are unfamiliar with just Gundam in general. It is a brand new timeline and there is it's a good entry point into just Gundam in general.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, the new season has been really fun.
Cool. Why do you think it's a good entry point? Is it just like
there's no previous timeline that you have to be familiar with, which definitely helps.
Yes.
And it is a much more modern Gundam.
Well animated, well presented.
Yeah, the music's fantastic. Yeah. The mobile suit designs are actually way better than I thought they would be.
We rewatched some of Mobile Suit Gundam, the original show, just the other day, and it was pretty rough.
It was
pretty rough.
1979.
Yeah,
that's how it goes. So then I also have Akiba Maid Wars. I'm not going to tell you anything about this
because it gives it away.
You have to go and watch the first episode. Don't look up a single thing.
Akiba Maid Wars.
Yep. Don't look up a single thing.
It feels like you're setting up some poor kid.
Am I going to get on like a watch list?
Yeah, they're going to have it on their TV and then, Mom!
We really like it. It is a lot of subversion.
Where can somebody watch that?
Crunchyroll, I believe.
Okay, crunch that roll.
So then we are also watching Bocchi the Rock.
Good lord, man.
So it's all anime.
There's all anime.
Except for Granny Bake Off.
Which is, so Bocchi the Rock is from a 4-panel manga. So it's more of a comedy style, but it's basically an introvert that wants to become a rock star.
Okay.
And it's very cute, great animations, a lot of fun. Then we are also watching the revive of Urusei Yatsura, which is a 1970s anime from Rumiko Takahashi. And it's basically the original show, just reanimated. So
so it's like, is it a retelling or is it just a straight up?
It's just a retelling, yeah.
Okay. But like, are they changing plot points or is it just like a...
From what I can remember, no.
Okay.
But it's fun. It is very pretty. It's kind of more akin to like Looney Tunes than it is like a romance comedy kind of thing. Like there's kind of like rules involved
where like slapstick.
You know that the main character has terrible luck, and no matter what is going to happen, that is always going to happen. Like he is always going to have bad luck at the end.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like Bugs Bunny can't be, he doesn't provoke. He has to be provoked to basically retaliate. Right. Or Daffy Duck always is going to pick a fight.
Or you have like the Coyote and the Wile E. Coyote rules where they're like the 10 rules surrounding how the interactions work. Okay.
Those kind of things where like it is very pretty. The show is good, but it's not going to be for everyone.
Okay, fair.
That is my list.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So yeah, we gotta put caveats on that. Andrew will consume almost anything. He's like
rude.
It's like if you picked up a raccoon and threw it in a dumpster. He's just like, it's all good.
No, honestly, this fall season of anime has been fantastic so far. There's a lot of really good quality shows, and there's also some really fun ones in there too. Bocchi the Rock is kind of like the dark horse that I wasn't expecting that I really like.
Yeah,
and we are loving it now.
So when fall season anime hits, right? Do you like try to kind of have a game plan of like, I know I'm going to watch
how do you
XYZ?
approach this?
How many do you just take a chance on?
So basically, you have your recurring ones like Spy Family and My Hero, those kind of things.
Stuff
Yeah, we've already invested so much time into those. Those air, we watch them, period.
Yeah.
Then I normally take probably about 3 choices of like, ooh, this one looks good. This one looks kind of cool. And this one is just kind of like, that's a really weird premise. We'll give it an episode or 2 to see how it goes.
Yeah.
And most of the time, if we don't like it by episode 3, that's about kind of where
Time
we draw the line.
Off. Yeah.
But so far, like everything that we've picked up has been just fabulous.
Cool. Steven, what are you watching?
A bunch of stuff for this podcast. What it feels like.
Same.
Andrew here, like, I watch this, I watch that. If I have time, I fit this in and that in, and this in and this and that. And we'll give this 3 episodes of a chance. And I'm just like,
3 episodes?
Holy cow.
I give it 5 minutes.
This is not related to anything along this. The wife and I have spent far too much time watching League of Legends World Tournament, which is on right now. She is almost more hooked than I am in a sense, where like today I was doing stuff for podcasts in the other room and I could hear in the living room, it's just on. She's just watching it. She doesn't know either of these teams playing. She's just watching, which is kind of funny. Watching some Andor.
Yeah.
Which that will pick up now that we've been.
Andor's another one.
Yeah, you didn't take it, so I'm taking it.
I still haven't started that one yet, but I want to.
Yeah, it's good.
It's very good.
It is. We've had a lot of friends who've told us this is the Star Wars we deserve. And then other people will be like, well, no, you don't deserve it, blah, blah. No, we deserve good Star Wars.
You don't deserve anything.
It is a fantastic show.
How many episodes are you in?
We're caught up, so we're episode 7 is when we're recording this.
You caught up too?
No.
No, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I am behind because I'm behind on everything right now.
Same.
Because of the podcast.
The podcast has just been like, what if we watched another TV? What if we reviewed a TV show? What if we reviewed another TV show?
What if you 2 TV shows?
What if all of the good
time.
releases right now are TV shows? Like,
Yeah. The beginning of the fall has been pretty brutal for a lot of the shows that we're watching.
Oh, yeah.
And we have another show to pitch Ryan as a review off air.
We do.
Yeah.
Save that for after
Oh,
hours.
no.
What else are you watching?
That's about
it?
Yeah, it's YouTube stuff. Always some YouTube channels out there that we watch pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Sorted Food. If you want to hear other British people mispronounce things.
Practical Engineering is another great
Practical
channel.
Engineering is a great one. Real Civil Engineer, which has nothing to do with engineering, has everything to do with a guy playing games. He's just happened to be an engineer.
Nice.
So, all British for some reason, but whatever.
Yeah.
There's just something about that accent.
What about you, Steve, or Ryan?
That is not Steven. I'm Steven. Thank you very
He's
much.
over there. I'm over here. I mean, really the biggest thing I've watched is She-Hulk.
Yeah.
That's been one that I had a lot of fun with. It just wrapped up a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of great cameos, a lot of great humor. It's definitely not like the best show on earth or anything, but like
I've honestly heard it was great.
I enjoyed it thoroughly. Like it's definitely like the stakes are so low. That's what makes it great. And it makes fun of the MCU on so many levels that like if you have any kind of MCU fatigue, like there will be a lot of jokes that you like appreciate and get. And it's very like very true to the comics of the 80s, the John Byrne run, where like they break the fourth wall and they have a lot of humor that is very self-referential, but it's never, in my opinion, it's never like cheesy or too much or too hackneyed. It's like very well executed. And Tatiana Maslany as Jen Walters is great. Like when they first picked her, I was kind of like, oh, okay, the girl from Orphan Black. I never watched all of Orphan Black, but because everybody was lobbying for Alison Brie to play She-Hulk originally, and I would have loved that, But now that I've seen Tatiana Maslany, I'm like, oh no, this is perfect. So I loved it. Wrapped up on that. My wife and I have been rewatching Kids in the Hall, the sketch comedy from early 90s, Canadian sketch comedy.
Wait, is that? No, that's not what I was thinking of. Never mind.
So in the 90s, there was a sketch comedy troupe in Canada called Kids in the Hall that Lorne Michaels produced alongside like, SNL and that kind of stuff. And I watched it growing up. It was like a formative pillar of my humor. It was like Kids in the Hall, Mel Brooks movies, and Mystery Science Theater 3000 were like 3 of the biggest points on the trident that is like what Ryan thinks is funny. And it's very irreverent and very like, I don't want to say edgy. It's just they definitely for the time, it was like SNL was the safe bet. Yeah. And Kids in the Hall was where they did experimental stuff. It's kind of the way to think of it. And they just released a new season on Amazon. They got all of them back together and they're all extremely old and they all make fun of how old they are. And they're all like, and so I watched that when it released because I was like, oh, I love Kids in the Hall. And my wife was like, I've never seen any of it. So I was like, we got to rewatch the old stuff. They put all of it on Amazon. And so we've been rewatching that at dinner because it's like, with commercials taken out, it's like a 22, 24 minute, episode. And it's like that perfect, like, okay, we just sat down, we have our food, put it on, we can eat, we're done eating, and it's done. So that's like a easy digestible, and there's no subtitles, so we don't have to like, read and you can
strain yourself for it. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been watching the new DuckTales.
Oh man, the new DuckTales is fantastic.
We're about a third of the way into season 2 right now.
Oh man, yeah, season 2 is great.
Yeah, season 2
we
is
still
really
need
good.
to watch season 3. But
how do you have time to watch all these things, Andrew?
Listen,
I don't know.
Andrew has a hyperbolic time chamber. He gets in it.
Oh my God.
Instead of training, he just watches TV shows.
Well, I mean, we watch stuff whenever we eat dinner.
That's how he keeps up with One Piece.
Oh, God, no, I definitely can't keep up with One Piece. I stopped after like episode 400. And I still like One Piece a lot, but I don't think I'll ever be able to catch up. It's just such a time.
Given that they're at like 1,300 episodes
No,
now.
they're not that high. It's like they're almost right under 1,100.
Woof. So 1,300 wasn't that far off.
No, but I mean, it's, we have to think about every 52 episodes is a new year.
Oh, man. Wow. Yeah. I haven't even started that and never will now.
Yeah. There's a fun thing. So if you actually choose to try and catch up on One Piece, it is almost It is even though like they have some fantastic opening and ending themes for the show, like all throughout all the seasons.
Yeah.
You basically have to skip all of them if you want to catch up in any reasonable amount of time. Because I think it's like if you watch every single one, it's like 3 or 4 months worth of time of just watching One Piece opening and endings.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, they're 1,035.
Yeah.
Delete.
Yeah, it's horrifying.
Delete. Nope. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I've been watching a few horror movies because it's
Halloween.
It's October.
I've watched and I don't want to get too far into it, but we mentioned it in our Patreon bonus episode with horror recommendations.
Shameless plug.
I watched
Just $1, people.
2 movies from Ty West. One was X, the sequel to it, Pearl. Very good movies, and again, each of them are good in their own right, but watched together, they kind of tell like 2 sides of a coin.
Yeah.
It's a very cool, and they've just announced a 3rd movie, which I'm very excited
the
about.
third side of the coin, the unexpected
a
edge.
3-sided coin. And then I've been watching some Japanese horror movies. I've been trying to brush up on that. So I watched Ringu, the original they based The Ring off of.
Yeah.
And then a movie called Pulse. You ever heard of that one?
I actually have heard of that one.
It's around the same era, like early 2000s, and it's kind of similar to The Ring in premise a little bit, but it's like focused on the internet.
Yeah.
And it's weird watching it because like this was like 2003, and there are characters in this movie that treat the internet like I was treating it in like 96. Like this one kid has never used the internet before.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was in college like emailing professors my assignments in 2003. Like, what is this movie?
Yeah.
I was like, Japan wasn't like a decade behind us on the internet.
I thought they were good at the technology.
Yeah. And so it's interesting to watch it from that standpoint. Of like, it feels like it's made in the 90s, but it came out in like 2003. But it's kind of similar to The Ring in that like this thing is spreading and affecting people, but it's happening through a computer instead of through a videotape, basically. It's like the computer.
It's the more modern version of The Ring. It spreads through the internet.
So it's Sword Art Online.
Instead of Blockbuster.
Kinda. But it had some pretty spooky moments. There's a couple of like scary scenes. Overall, it's kind of like weak. Like some of the things, some things just happen.
Yeah.
Like they just start happening. And you're like, was this like they didn't know how to like connect point A to B? So they were just like, I don't know, this happens. And there's some bad special effects here and there. Mostly towards the end, they try to get like there's some really cheesy like explosions that look like they bought like a what's that video co-pilot, like the cheap add-on stuff. And I was like, okay. But again, it was 2003. They were probably like, whoa.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about all I've been watching.
Nice.
Y'all are just like cranking out these huge lists. And I'm just like, I just look at YouTube.
I mean, it's really easy to consume a lot of anime because they're only 20-minute episodes.
That's true.
So in the time it takes me to watch one episode of House of Dragons, I can watch 3 different shows entirely of anime.
That week's releases.
Yeah. So it's not that it is a lot of individual content, but the time-wise is really not that much.
It's not as big.
I'm not going to lie. When The Mandalorian season 1 was a thing, and it was like, well, how long are the episodes? They're like, it's streaming. We choose how long it is. This week's might be 35. Next week's might be 48. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's a really great content. You're free of the shackles, right?
Yeah.
And now that I'm like going through 3 TV series where they're like, oh, we can do whatever we want. This is an hour long. I'm like, okay, guys, I'm ready to go back to 24 minutes of TV.
Well, especially with Stranger Things season 4, where they're just like, oh, there's going to be some 40-minute episodes. Actually, there's going to be a 2-hour episode in there. Like,
it's a small movie. Get used to it.
It's a movie. It's not 2 hours. It's not a small movie. That's a movie.
And it's one of those things too where it's not a bad thing, but it's very hard for me to say I enjoy sitting down for an hour at a time to watch one singular show. And maybe that's just because I just consume a lot of anime to where like I just consume it in 20-minute chunks. And the second that it starts going over that, I'm just like, oh man, I got other stuff to do.
See, I come to the other end of the spectrum. Go ahead, Steven.
I was gonna say, I definitely caught myself, specifically for House of Dragons, checking how much time is left in this?
Yeah, right. That's never a good sign.
That's not
I did that too,
great.
but not for length reasons. I was just like, oh my, how much longer is it? No, but like I come almost from the opposite side of like I watch mostly hour-long stuff. And so when I do come across like a show that's like 20 minutes, oh baby, I can binge that in like a weekend, no prob. It's just like bam, 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 4 episodes in it.
It's really easy to get through it just because, there's just there's only so many episodes. Like, I don't know.
But there has definitely been some shows where, like, I think they stick to kind of like a 30-minute limit. And I feel like they need to be 45 minutes to an hour. I've definitely had the opposite where, like, I'm watching something, I'm like, man, I wish we had about 20 more minutes.
They needed to
more meat on the bone.
They needed to flesh this out a little better so it had more impact.
So, like, this is just kind of getting off on a tangent, but the live action Cowboy Bebop, I felt that they actually needed the episodes to be a tad longer or a tad shorter, just in certain cases,
just to force their hand.
To either make it a much more concise story or give us just a little bit extra more time and maybe one or two more scenes in there to give us just a little bit more context for some certain things.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I didn't finish that.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a good show. But
I started it and I agree. Like, I felt like there was a couple of episodes where I was like, this should have been 24 minutes. Like, y'all needed
to done.
Yeah, like get this tightened up because there's so many scenes that just lingered. And then there's other stuff that they introduce this cool idea and then do nothing with it.
And just immediately look the other way. Like,
and you're like, well, pick one or the other, y'all.
And speaking of shows that are long-winded and take very long time to get to one point to another, or go too fast.
I would disagree that they took too long. I think it went far too fast sometimes, but
porque no los dos. All right, so we're going to move on to our thoughts on House of the Dragon. First, let's hit with some info about the show. So, plot summary for our House of the Dragon, right? It is based on material from George R.R. Martin's book, Fire and Blood. House of the Dragon tells the story of the Dance of the Dragons and the events leading up to the brutal Civil War. King Viserys Targaryen rules over an unprecedented times of peace, but questions about his succession threaten to send the realm into chaos. And the book, Fire and Blood, if you don't know, is essentially a prequel book to the Game of Thrones series, but it's written a little differently. It's actually written from the perspective of multiple
accounts.
Yeah, it's called a treatise, or I'm trying to remember the word they used in the description online, but basically but it's an unreliable narrator. So like the book itself has multiple viewpoints. It's almost
like the book is based on found footage kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's trying to emulate the way history was, where it's like you have multiple people writing histories and each of them have their own version kind of events.
And there's no guarantee any of these people were actually present for this battle or whatever. Yeah.
Right, yeah. So let's see. The show released August 21st, 2022. Showrunners for the show are Ryan Condal and Miguel Sapochnik. I'm probably butchering that. Sapochnik. But Sapochnik, in recent news, has left the show. So after season 1, he's like, I'm out.
Interesting.
And it seems like it's amicable. Like all the quotes from him are like,
he's just wanted to do something different.
I think the original plan was to have the two of those guys do the entire thing.
Yeah.
So,
season 2 may have a different vibe.
It may have a different vibe. They're bringing in some people from previous Game of Thrones to kind of jump in there, but Ryan Condal is staying on board.
Scary.
That's
depending on who it is and what season they worked on. Yeah,
highly dependent on the name.
But yeah, it seems like it's a good situation. But it could just be people, playing the PR game and
corporate
watching
speak.
their So either way, it stars Rhys Ifans. I hope I'm saying that right.
We're just gonna destroy all of these names.
Yeah, exactly. Get ready for
Rhys Ifans.
Rhys Ifans.
Who do they play?
I always think of him in The Replacement. Remember, he's the
Sir Otto Hightower.
This is Otto, right?
Yeah. He played in the movie The Replacements with Keanu Reeves. He played the kicker who was from the soccer player. Ole. I always think of him as that forever.
That's
I apologize.
Amazing. What a huge transition throughout a career.
I'm sure he's done a lot of really good stuff, but my mind always goes to that.
He's come so far.
You got Matt Smith, Patty Constantine.
Yep.
Yeah, Constantine from Hot Fuzz.
Hot Fuzz, that's where
he's from a lot of other things, but we know him.
We know him from Hot Fuzz.
Matt Smith from Doctor Who.
Yep, Matt Smith. And one of those bad Terminator movies. I can't remember which one. Millie Alcock, Emily Carey, Emma D'Arcy, and Olivia Cook, which Millie Alcock and Emma D'Arcy play the young and older version of Rhaenyra Targaryen.
Right.
And then Emily Carey and Olivia Cook play the young and older versions of
Alicent.
And I know Olivia Cook from a bunch of different shows. She's been in a lot of stuff.
I recognize the name, but I haven't gone digging through IMDb.
She was one of the love interests in the Psycho TV series.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's totally something I know.
I feel like I've seen her in a movie with Anya Taylor-Joy, but I can't remember the name of it.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, I think so. She's been.
I'll pull it up.
Well, so now I'm just gonna go digging.
Yeah, composed by I'm gonna mess up all these names. Ramin Djawadi.
That was a good effort. I'll give you that.
Djawadi. Ramin
Sure.
Djawadi. DJAWADI. He did Westworld, Uncharted, the movie.
Wait, Olivia Cook?
Yeah.
She's Artemis in Ready Player One.
Yeah. I was going to say that
Oh,
too.
yeah,
But
duh.
Bates Motel was the Psycho TV series.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Which is actually a really fantastic show.
Really?
Yeah, we really liked it.
I heard good things, but
Yeah,
I
it was
never
good.
checked it
I mean,
out.
Andrew is the whole I can't do horror, and he's recommending
It
this,
is not
so-
horror at all. It's more
It's
just
Bates Motel.
It's a thriller.
it's just it's thriller soap
Mystery.
opera.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, right up your alley.
Yeah.
So Ramin Djawadi did Westworld, Uncharted, the movie, Eternals, and some Game of Thrones work.
Mhm.
And then, let's see, the budget for this show is reportedly somewhere between $150 and $200 million.
For the whole show.
For the whole show.
So
yeah, season
15
one.
to 20 million per episode.
Yeah, under 20 mil per episode is what people were trying to equate it to.
So we're about
almost-
$40 million cheaper.
Yeah, a third
per episode.
A third of Ring of Power's
it's
budget.
it's less than half.
Yeah.
For sure, because it's kind of up in the air. There's no exact.
Yeah, of course. It's all
I
speculation.
emailed the
but at the
accountant.
high-
He never got back to
But
me.
the high estimate, let's say it's 20 million per episode. Rings of Power is 58 plus million. Like it's still at the high point a third.
Yeah.
So it's somewhere between a quarter and a third.
Yep. And I feel that it shows on certain aspects.
So I think it does show up a little bit, but in ways that are not as relevant. Like it's more of a choice by the people directing and producing and creating the show than it is a choice.
I don't know. Is it a choice to have bad green screening?
Well, now that's a different choice. I'm more thinking in terms of like lighting.
No, that's fine.
I feel like they're just leaning into a Game of Thrones aesthetic, which is not necessarily great.
It is what it
We'll
is.
get on
We'll
that.
get to
Yeah,
that.
we'll get
in there.
Okay, so each of us rated this show across 5 categories: spectacle, performance, score, plot, and entertainment. Those individual scores then got together and had babies.
And we
And
aggregate them
lot
together.
of babies.
The incestuous lineage of those scores lives on as our overall score,
It does.
which for House of the Dragon is a 7.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about that score?
It's respectable.
I think that is a respectable score. And I will definitely say that I likely have brought this score down from a general average because I don't like Game of Thrones.
I don't know
Okay.
if that's necessarily true. I mean,
We'll find out.
Get into it. We'll get into it.
Yeah, we'll find out.
So what are your overall thoughts?
So I see why people like Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
It is just not my bag.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go ahead and preface that for everything that I say after this.
Bias. We've detected bias.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I try and remove
You're not
that.
supposed to confirm that for the people. Come on now.
Well, no, that's why we have an
That's for them to do.
That's why we have an entertainment score.
Yeah.
But the show itself, for the most part, it's mostly pretty. There are some very poorly done scenes with CGI
and green screen.
and green screen, honestly, all the way up until the finale. And the finale was pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
For graphic wise.
I think.
I feel like they may have pushed more of their money
yeah,
and
absolutely.
effort.
Yeah,
there.
and I think they
Yeah.
are also able to get away with everything is fantastic in the finale. Like the moments that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Everything is fantastic, so it just blends itself together,
Mhm.
as opposed to being like, hey, this real sunset and also this person on a dragon. I need you to blend that.
Yeah.
Oh.
But beyond that, honestly, the acting in this show is phenomenal.
Really, really good.
I think it's very good, and that is what people watch Game of Thrones for. They watch it for the medieval drama, kind of, I'll say soap opera.
Yeah.
Political
Yeah,
intrigue.
it's political machinations and backstabbing and everything. And there's really not generally a ton of action that happens. When I say action, I mean like large scale battles and everything that happen.
It's
on
it's
like
few
a
and
per
far
episode
between
basis.
when those things
Yeah.
happen. Yeah.
So from that, I just don't find that very interesting. Mostly because I
Mhm.
don't like the medieval setting.
Okay.
The dragons and stuff are cool, sure,
Yeah.
but that's just not the fantasy that I like.
Mhm.
And so whenever I'm kind of watching this show, it's very hard for me to stay kind of really attuned to watching the show. Now there are definitely some good moments, and there's some good, kind of like political maneuverings and stuff that I do enjoy.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I just was kind of, it's fine.
So for someone who does not like Game of Thrones, you also didn't really. This wasn't quite your jam.
Not
safe to
really.
say?
Now, I did like this more than Game of Thrones. One, because it was substantially a lot less just on-screen sex, which I generally don't care about. But
You were very prudish. We
yeah,
know
oh,
this.
yeah,
This is-
super.
Total prude.
This is
but
definitely
really, the
canon.
biggest thing was there wasn't as much graphic violence
Okay.
in this one. Now, there's a lot of graphic moments,
Boy, howdy, are there.
But not as often. And I like that the story was a lot smaller.
Okay.
So you had, you basically have one general family, and there's just a lot of kind of going back and forth.
We kind of work off one family, but we also pick up the side family. They're related, though.
Yeah,
It's all relatives. It's not just this random Lord blah, blah, blah in the land of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, with Game of Thrones, you have this large spanning across, the entire continent. Or
You're on 2 continents.
Yeah, or whatever for Westeros.
Yeah.
And, I don't like definitely those kind of shows where there's just such a big cast that if you don't like someone, you're going to get a whole episode about them, and then you just have to watch it for the whole time.
For 5 seasons.
Yeah. But I definitely did like this more than I liked Game of Thrones.
Okay. Steven, what do you think?
All right. Well, I do feel like we should also go around here and say how invested in Game of Thrones were you in terms of how much did you watch?
Zero. Okay, so I watched the first season. They killed a horse, and then I stopped.
Okay.
And then I watched the last 2 seasons because
just out of morbid curiosity.
Yeah, but I did keep up with the story every week. I read the synopsis just because at the time I was working in an office, so I needed to have something
water
to talk
cooler
about.
Talk. You got to handle small talk.
I need to have something to talk about.
Have you read the books?
No.
Okay.
I will not read the books.
Okay.
So I have not read the books either, but I watched the entirety of the show and was a big fan.
Yeah.
Huge fan of the first, let's say, 5 seasons, I believe. Basically, before they started time warping everything to hurry it up. And the way, once they passed the books, for me, the show had a marked, downtick in quality. But I was still a fan up to the very end. I felt very betrayed by because I really, really liked it the first 5 seasons. But never read the book. Steven?
So I've seen a handful of episodes, literally that's it. Read some synopses. I've read the books, which only helps you up to a point, obviously. I was one of those people on Facebook the night when the episode that was the Red Wedding hit. Just let's see some reactions. Because everyone was just so blown away by how could you do this? And it's how do you not know this is coming?
Now, don't get into details. We're before the spoilers.
We're not getting into
I was just saying it out loud.
This is
I know.
It's an old show, but I'm not spoiling anything. Just, expectations, etc.
Yeah.
But for House of Dragons specifically, right? Obviously, I watched the whole season, which is more than I can say for Game of Thrones. Whether or not that was because of, obligations, we're not going there.
It was obligations.
I was obligated. We're not going there. But I mean, I overall, I think I enjoyed this. There are definitely some elements of Games of Thrones as a whole that House of Dragons picks up that I could do without. There is, I hesitate to call it a, Ryan's just going to edit this dead space out.
Fine.
I'm sorry.
Probably not.
I'm super sorry because I just pulled a horrible play.
Just out the head.
Sometimes they get in there and they just kind of wallow or revel in the gore or the shock value
and that's
of what's
always
happening.
That's always kind of the thing that gets me with these kind of shows.
And you're talking about specifically Game of Thrones, not House of Dragons.
Well, I'm talking about it as a universe.
Okay,
as a theme or whatever.
Now, in the books, does it get really gnarly in the descriptions of the violence?
Is it Stephen King levels?
Especially, actually. I don't think, I feel like, and it's been a long time since I've read the books. I read the books in college, and then obviously after college, because you have to wait for Martin to actually finish stuff and put it out.
Yeah, he's still not done, right?
He's still not done.
Yeah, he writes blogs all the time.
He writes about the Jets all the time. It's like, dude, if you're going to blog, at least blog about a decent team.
Got him. But all the Jets fans just yanked their cards out.
But yeah, I mean, so general thoughts. I mean,
like I said, there are elements of this, right, that are not for me.
Yeah.
But overall, I found myself throughout the show, despite not having one character that I was necessarily rooting for or whatever, just kind of slowly sliding further up onto my seat, being like, don't do this. This is a bad decision. How can you not see this bad? Right? And then the episode ends and why do I care about that? Why do I care about this happening?
Well,
leave me alone.
I feel for most of the season, it was written pretty well for you to care about the characters.
And I think that
there are some problems, but
big selling point, right?
See, I would disagree with that.
The writing,
we'll get into that later.
The writing is, I think, a very high bar in terms of not just the dialogue, the interactions, some of what's happening. There's some
really good lines.
There's some good, and they're not lines that sound like they are written by an AI.
No.
And I think the character interactions are really good. The acting in
Acting's
this
great.
show is really, really strong. And it needs to be because that's where we are. We're putting the camera in the dimly lit room and we're gonna watch
Very
these
dimly
two
lit
people
room.
talk to each other, and then this person's gonna leave and go next door, and then he's gonna talk to somebody else, and now it's gonna be, ooh, intrigue, right?
Yeah.
So like if this is two planks staring at each other over one candle, it's not gonna work. So they really did a good job with the casting, especially with the challenge of having to have the older and younger
Yeah, time
actors.
skips.
Yeah.
And Andrew and I were talking about this earlier before you got here of just, wow, the casting, right? Like, where did they find these people? This person looks like that person 10 years later.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm feel pretty confident to say there wasn't some kind of like up-aging or, facial alteration
No?
to like
Oh,
help
no.
match it better. I feel like they just found good people for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, what are your thoughts?
So I was somewhat disappointed with this show.
Okay.
Wow.
I didn't dislike it,
Mm-hmm.
but it was nowhere near as good as Game of Thrones to me.
Well, now,
Like-
hold on.
Well, and coming from a big fan of Game of Thrones, like
Yeah.
I'll say first 5 seasons, we'll
Yeah,
just ignore the
Ignoring
existence of
the bad seasons. Yeah.
Now, are you putting the full weight of, we'll say, all 5 seasons of Game of Thrones versus one
I'm
season?
talking like
Because
season one of
season
Game of
one of Game of
Thrones.
Thrones was pretty ridiculous for what happens, right?
Exactly.
There's a lot that happens.
especially
So,
for that era
for-
of TV.
For me, my problem, and again, it's been a long time since I rewatched all of Game of Thrones. I mean, I haven't ever rewatched it. I've just watched it leading up to each season,
Yeah.
But like for me, the problem I have with House of the Dragon is that even though it's really well acted and I think it's shot really well, it's lit really well. Like there's a lot of
He says
Cool.
lit really
I
well. Look
know.
at this
Well,
guy.
okay, lit really well.
except for
Look,
episodes asterisk. Generally, the lighting is very moody and really cool looking. I like a lot of the
lit
stuff
really
they
well.
got.
They forgot to bring set lighting. It's
Oh my
lit really
God.
well, I promise.
If you're watching on a Dolby Vision TV like me, it looked great. My problem is I don't care about any of the characters. Nowhere near as much as I did the characters in Game of Thrones.
Do you
So-
think that's just because you've already watched Game of Thrones, so you have
No,
you
I'm
haven't-
I'm gonna back Ryan up on this.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go into it per se pre-spoilers.
yeah.
But there's something that Game of Thrones had that this show lacks.
Yes.
And I can put my finger directly on it. And I don't think we can discuss it
So
in a.
I will attempt to discuss it
Okay,
a little
good
bit
luck.
spoiler free. What I will say here is that like there are a lot of characters in the original Game of Thrones that you are like, okay, this is a good person. I will root for this person. Okay, this is clearly a bad person.
They
I
are
will
a,
root
they are a
against this person.
sympathetic character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
their stories are fleshed out. Even in season 1, even after like the first episode, I already knew who I'm rooting for, who I'm rooting against, and who like I think is going to be fun to watch.
I think that's actually probably not a good thing.
I mean, that's certainly your opinion.
Well, it was for Game of Thrones because then they could play the subversion
versus
of
bad.
expectations
Well, and there's-
of what happens in Game of Thrones, right?
There
For
are
the good and
definitely
honorable people.
characters that I was rooting for that I was not by the end. So you have that ability to go through a character arc.
Or characters who you were like, well, this is definitely a bad person. And
Right.
some point midway through a season, you're like, am I starting to like this? Are they starting to change,
you
or
have
am
that
I
kind of stuff
changing?
happening.
Mm-hmm.
In House of the Dragon, I have, and I'll save it for after spoilers, but I only have like one person I'm really pulling for, and I'm barely pulling for them. Like,
I don't think this is a show that you're supposed to like anyone.
but I did like people in Game of Thrones, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and
Right.
So
think
I
that-
had a distinct like. I liked the show because of the characters of Game of Thrones.
Mm.
I don't like this show because I don't really love any of the characters.
It's not that I
Yeah.
wanted more Game of Thrones. It's
No.
I wanted more of these characters from Game of Thrones.
Right.
Which-
Well, not even that.
and that's
just
totally
like,
fine.
I'm fine with it. They don't have to like replicate the archetype characters from Game of Thrones
Right,
to make
yeah,
me
yeah.
happy. It's just that like I watched Game of Thrones less for the political intrigue and more for the characters.
Gotcha.
This show, I'm only watching it for the political intrigue, and for me, it's small. Like it feels weird. It feels like if you like for me, I loved the multiple continents. I loved the multiple houses, the families, the sprawl, all the characters. I was like, give me more, eat it up like soup. When I got to this show, it feels like baby's first Game of Thrones on a lot of levels, and that we're
Now-
following one family, and it's just not. We
Now, I
don't
will
go.
say it does feel
Yeah.
like that scope is starting to expand.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely also say this. This is a great example of core belief change or core belief differences
Mhm.
between Ryan and I.
Oh,
Just because like he cares about the characters. He likes a really big like open cast and everything like that. And I whenever I look at Game of Thrones, even in the original series, I just didn't care about anyone.
Interesting.
I cared about Sean Bean. That was it.
Well,
because I like Sean Bean because
effort.
he was in Lord of the Rings. Like that that is as far as my like loyalty goes to any characters, because they have to show me that they're worthy of my love.
Wow. You have to earn it. For me, I guess the first game, the Game of Thrones, just season 1, just limiting it to season 1 versus season 1, I liked seeing different areas. I liked hopping around. I liked understanding the different dynamics between the families.
I will say, though, I wonder if there's some element of they don't want to just be like, hey, remember this place? You liked this place.
Yeah.
Sure.
There wasn't a lot of nostalgia baiting.
I'm completely fine with that. I understand that, like, you don't want to just have and again, I don't know the source material enough to know if, like, maybe in the book it never leaves King's Landing for a long time.
So here's kind of the other question too that I have is, okay, so clearly you've stated that you love the original Game of Thrones and everything like that. So do you think that's also it's because that was basically the first, like, I'll say adult level medieval soap opera drama for fantasy that had the high budget that we've all come to expect at this point with these shows, where that was your first experience into it. So clearly you're going to love all of this.
I mean, I watched Xena Warrior Princess, Andrew.
Yeah, no, I mean that's fine.
but like, talking about high budget, that was a joke.
But it's one of those things where like this was this took over pop culture for so many years because this was the first high budget,
the definitive.
It's a definitive piece of media. Well, where like clearly you're going to love it if you already buy into that kind of thing.
I think to a degree. I think the difference for me is that I think it's the scope feels smaller in a bad way to me.
Okay.
In that it almost feels like, and this is a bit cynical, and I don't feel exactly this way, but it's like it almost feels too much like a cash in of like we have to do more Game of Thrones stories than there's enough meat on the bone for us to actually make a legitimate Game of Thrones prequel series here.
Oh, see, I actually don't think that's.
I don't fully agree with what I'm saying. That's why
you're somewhere in there.
I'm somewhere in between.
Because I actually think that there was more than enough content here to be an interesting show for people that like it.
And if they were working off of bare bones writing, which they kind of are, then they're doing a great job on the back end
at extrapolating
of building out a story.
Yeah, filling in the blanks. And I know of a couple of changes that we'll save till after spoilers of things they've changed from the book that I've just heard people mention.
Yeah.
And so, they're definitely working off of less of a roadmap, whereas, obviously Game of Thrones, they're trying to compress a lot of stuff. This one, they're trying to expand it. So, like, I think they did a good job of expanding. I'm just saying, like, as a, flat out, like, gut check reaction, I could not get enough of Game of Thrones. I was, like, fine on whether I missed an episode of this or not. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't pull me in. It didn't hook me like Game of Thrones did. I still enjoyed it. I don't think it's a bad series or anything like that. Right. I just want to definitively say, like, gut check wise, it did not hit me and grab me like Game of Thrones. And that's probably for 100 reasons. But to me, it feels too small and I don't really have any characters to root for. And like, so you're talking about core belief differences. Like in the first season of Game of Thrones, literally 0% of the violence and sex bothered me in the slightest. Like not even monster. I didn't even blink. It's like that did not drive me away.
Well, part of the issue for me is when it's Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, right? Yeah. And so as soon as they go into a brothel, I'm just like, well, here we go. Game of Thrones is going to Game of Thrones. It
is kind of
for me. It just felt like Game of Thrones felt like baby's first non-broadcast show. Where they're just like, oh, we can do all this
shock value,
stuff.
Lowest common denominator.
Yeah, we can throw in as much sex and violence in here because we don't have to worry about.
What if you open the door?
HBO.
Yeah, what if you open the door and she's just naked?
Yeah.
They'll never see that coming.
Definitely, I will fully admit that there are like definitely scenes in especially the first few seasons where there's like gratuitous nudity for no reason other than just like, look what we can do.
To prove they could
same thing with violence. And there's like, but again, it wasn't enough to put me off of it is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Have you ever found yourself sitting and wondering, boy, I wonder what it takes for them to make this show happen? Well, by golly, today is your day because I am here to tell you that for just $1 a month, you can help support the show, help us pay those hosting costs, and keep coming up with brilliant content. And you even get something more for your trouble. That's right, for just $1 a month. All bonus episodes on Patreon, guaranteed at least one per month, can be yours to listen to.
What if you wanted to listen to us complain and argue about James Bond openings?
Have I got a deal for you for $1?
Or fast food? How do we tier those? How do you rank
How would
those?
we rank fast food? Let me tell you, $1, and you can listen to us screech at each other like a bunch of banshees about
McDonald's versus Wendy's.
the quality of Wendy's.
But my fries.
Yeah. I mean,
there's a lot of good episodes on there. There's a lot more to come.
There's a
it's
lot
$1.
more coming.
To answer the question that Steven brought up, what does keep the podcast going? It's money.
$1.
We take money and we throw it into the steam engine that is this train, and it keeps us going down the track. We need
just $1 a month.
$1. We come to you hat in hand, not begging for a lot, a single $1. We'll give you lots of great content for that $1.
So you get at least one bonus episode a month for $1 a month. That sounds great, right? But what if you got 2 bonus episodes a month?
That might happen.
I bet that costs more. No, wait, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
It's just $1.
But it's got to cost more to get access to all of the previous bonus episodes.
No.
Right? Oh my gosh.
The second you give us $1, you have access to everything.
Does the government know we're doing this? Are they going to shut us down?
Not yet. We ask for forgiveness, not permission.
All right, that means we are now past the spoiler wall, so it's all spoilers all the time. Let me hit you guys with a little bit of trivia before we get into our individual scores.
Sure.
So the Iron Throne in this show, House of the Dragon, is greatly redesigned from Game of Thrones. It's larger and it's asymmetrical to more closely match the description in George R.R. Martin's novels.
Okay, interesting.
I thought it looked a little different when they first shown it in episode 1.
It looked like a big throne of swords.
But I couldn't tell if it was just the lighting was different or they were at a different angle than I'm used to seeing.
There hasn't been enough wars yet to add to it.
Right.
I don't know.
Let's see. Oh, with almost 10 million viewers, House of the Dragon his pilot was the most watched series premiere in HBO's history. The original Game of Thrones series also saw a huge spike in streaming data in the weeks heading to the premiere of the show.
Oh, yeah.
So it looks like people were trying to rewatch. But that surprised me that it was the biggest series premiere. I guess
that's not surprising because it looked like the previews did look quite good for it.
Oh, and I loved there was some TikToks and stuff running around where people were filming the outside of an apartment building.
Yeah.
And you could see in the windows, everyone's the lighting inside their room would change as it came on because there were so many people in this one building
that were all watching.
They were all
watching. That was really
it.
cool to see where it's this is an event.
Cool. Well, and reading it now, I think that makes more sense because it says series premiere. Because I was about to say it's crazy to me this has more viewers than the finale of Game of Thrones, but that's not the series premiere. So for a premiere of a show, I guess I could see that's probably easily the highest one.
Well, and I'll definitely say this about Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, and even Rings of Power. Basically, any show or service that does not release stuff in binge format because it gives us stuff to talk about every single week.
It gives every episode room to breathe.
Yeah.
I can say this from experience as someone who has to sit down and pound episodes to get ready for these reviews. If you have to sit down and pound through episodes, there is no time to just kind of
marinate,
process what happened.
And have the full weight and shock value of, what's going to happen. I can't, talk to my coworkers. What do you think is going to happen? Because it's binged it.
Yeah,
it's already happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I go back and forth on that with certain shows I feel are made for binging in a better way. They're structured a little more for it. And other shows definitely you need that week between to let it sink in and process.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to our individual scores. Who wants to go first for Spectacle?
I'll probably be the lowest here.
I'll take it first.
Yeah.
Why not?
Steven, go.
So I gave Spectacle a 7.
Okay.
I think there were some, the costuming is good, right?
Costuming is fine.
It looks what you expect it to be. The settings, I think, are on point. Our castles look like castles. Our windswept cliffs look like windswept cliffs, I've liked, there've been a couple of shots, and we just saw it too, having, watched the finale, where we have 2 separate scenes across the season where we have meeting on the bridge at Dragonstone.
Yeah.
And both of those, one, the initial framing was good and the setup was good. And then they just mirror it because then you have or they repeat it. You have that same feel of deja vu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're doing good stuff with camera shots and setups, and
They're clearly thinking about where
Right.
they need to put the camera and
Yeah.
everything. I'll
Right.
definitely give them that.
The CGI has some rough moments.
Yeah.
And there have been some transitions and some green screens that need a tremendous amount of work. I'll let Andrew pick it up there.
So I gave it a 5.
Woo!
That's pretty low, but keep going.
Spicy.
So I do agree that the cinematography is actually quite nice.
Yeah, I think
The
it's very
costume designing
purposeful.
is good. The set design is good.
there's one of Damon's like
His outfits
armors
have all
was like incredible. I was
This is like the
whoa.
first episode armor.
Maybe it's
the
the
tournament
first-
armor.
Yeah.
I will say that shot of him in the tournament where he gets unhorsed and he like slides down the railing
Yeah.
was just like, ooh, yeah, let's
Yeah.
go.
I could feel it. Yeah. Sorry. keep going.
So the stuff that really did kind of pull me out was obviously like the poor green screening, which
Mhm.
we've already mentioned,
Mhm.
the poor CGI. For most of it, honestly, like the finale was a total different beast, and clearly they put a lot of their money and their time into that because there's a big
Yeah.
sequence at the end where two dragons are not fighting; they're just kind of going
It's
through.
a chase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that looked really nice.
I liked
Mhm.
that shot with when the big dragon appears above.
Oh yeah,
the
well
little
you knew
one.
it was coming too.
I know.
Yeah.
but
I'm not-
it still was good.
They pulled that right out of How to Train Your
I was
Dragon.
just about to
yeah.
say, I'm not going to lie. I didn't expect to watch this episode and be like, am I watching How to Train Your Dragon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A rougher, meaner.
Meaner.
So a lot of the wigs were bad, and it did bother me.
I guess I just
I
don't
didn't
notice
really
those
pick up on
things.
that.
Yeah, I guess I just don't see
Whose
it.
wig specifically? Do you remember?
Anyone that wasn't Lord Corliss, his wig was
Okay.
good. Yeah,
I mean, his wig
so
looks
all the
phenomenal,
Valerians were kind of tough.
I guess. I
The
don't
white,
have a
white hair
point
is
of
always hard to
comparison.
pull off, anyways, because
Sure.
you know that's not a very natural color unless you're very old.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple other wigs just throughout, just in King's Landing that were kind of bothering me.
Okay.
But honestly, the biggest thing that really knocked a lot of points off was episode 7, where and this is this is kind of one of those things where the mileage may vary based on what type of TV you are watching it on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we apparently do not have any TVs or devices in our household that do Dolby Vision, which apparently is how the episode was mastered. We are all on HDR10. And every single device that I watched it on was so dark, I basically could not see a single thing on the screen for half the episode.
So let me give a
Yeah.
quick technical explainer of what all that means.
Yes.
Just brief, because I got way in the weeds on it. So Dolby Vision and HDR10 are two different, basically, formats of HDR. So Dolby Vision has the added ability of being able to master each scene with a different, basically, dynamic range.
Different color code, basically.
Different color code, yeah. And on like 4K Blu-rays, it can go per frame,
Mhm.
which is like,
That's crazy.
That's why I buy physical media still. But like HDR10, which is an open source platform, is like the most like widespread
yeah, it's
because
common.
no one has to pay Dolby for rights to license their technology. Because as I understand it, in a TV, if it has Dolby Vision, it has to have a Dolby chip in the TV, like a
Mhm.
physical piece of hardware.
Yeah.
Whereas HDR10 could be a software update,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
But Dolby Vision has the ability for each scene, as it's being streamed, to have a different, basically color and brightness and darkness range,
Mhm.
HDR, right? Whereas HDR10 has to be like one profile for the entirety of the show. So I tested on a few of the TVs around my house, and every TV that had HDR10 looked like what you saw.
Yeah,
and it
we
was
just
just
can't see anything.
unwatchable. And then the
Black.
two screens I
Dark.
have that are Dolby Vision, I could see what was going on just fine. Now, it was still dark. Let me be clear. It's not like it was like a daytime
yeah.
shot or anything like that. But I was very easily able to see people's faces, their expressions. And that's a crazy good scene for me. Like, I was like, the emotion that happens in that scene is like really well acted.
Oh, it was,
Just,
yeah.
just lost on everyone. Because
But
you
like a
can't
lot of
see
people
them.
really couldn't see it. But
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's my soapbox of like, if you have a TV that has Dolby Vision, you may have seen it and been like, this looks fine. What's everybody
Yeah.
complaining
Why is
about?
everyone so mad?
Yeah.
So beyond that, we have this. They should have just mastered it correctly or shot it correctly. There's a lot of decisions that have to happen to get it out to that
I also
far.
feel like that may have been a time thing of like they could have, again, theoretically mastered a Dolby Vision version, then done a standard or a HD version, and then done an HDR10 version. But I guess that's 3 edits that have to happen to get a show out week to week. I don't know what their production timetable was like.
So then the final piece for me for Spectacle was the opening is super weak.
It's weak. It's pretty weak.
It's real weak.
Like, so this feels like they wanted, obviously, to try and recreate because they use the exact same theme song, which is silly already.
So I was in media blackout leading up to watching it of like, I don't want to see anything about it. And when I started the second episode, which is when the theme song makes an appearance, I was so disappointed, not because I don't like the Game of Thrones theme.
No, it's a great
I think
song.
the theme is great. I was just like, what? Like, I was here to hear another very iconic
another
theme
song
with like
that will
some
be
kind
stuck
of
in my head
leitmotifs
forever.
that bring back the theme,
I
but
was
not just the theme.
No, not just the theme again for a different show.
Now,
I
hold
was
on.
like, what?
Let's reserve that for a little later.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
But the visuals,
the actual visuals
are just bad.
Sorry.
they're
Yeah,
just
good
not
point.
good. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I understand the concept of it's like, oh, the bloodlines are going to all these different houses and crests, and they change them per episode. I don't care. It just looks bad.
Yeah, it's not good.
Visually, it's not great. And like in the in Game of Thrones, the intro, it's these little dioramas of the houses being
That's
built.
what
the
really brought
locations
tilt
and-
shift into the kind of popular media.
But it looks cool. And then again, they update the intro, and it's obvious. It's like, oh, look, that part of the castle's burned down now because this thing happened. Whereas in this one, they updated the intro multiple times. I couldn't tell you where.
Nope.
They just changed the sigil that the blood's running through. And I'm
Doesn't
like,
tell me anything.
am I supposed to be looking at all these sigils?
And
I
the blood
guess
doesn't look very good.
And know what they look.
No.
Now that's a plus. Probably made a bunch of people sick in focus groups if they had it too realistic.
All right, Ryan, go ahead.
I gave it an 8.
Ooh,
Mostly,
that's nice.
mostly because of the
Because
way
he watched
it
it on
was
Dolby Vision.
Yeah.
That
He's like,
crispy,
I don't know what you're talking about.
deep, rich, darks. The brights were perfect. No, I thought it was shot really well. I did like a lot of the non-episode 7 lighting, where like people are by the fireplace and they're talking.
moody.
It's like I feel like for what they were going for, it was great. And even a lot of the daytime scenes, a lot of shows that excel in like dark and moody also struggle during like normal scenes.
Yeah.
I felt like even the normal scenes like were really well lit. And episode 9, the when they're having the small council meeting where they basically are like, or you mean to tell me you guys have been planning, to install my son without me?
Yes.
The way that it's like softly lit, but it's still like, I don't know. I thought they did
It's
a
good
really good
dramatic
job
lighting.
on a lot of scenes like that. Again, I like the costuming. I didn't notice the wigs as much as
I really
as Andy
didn't
did.
notice. I just probably don't have any point of reference.
My thing was like the CG specifically. I felt like most of the dragons looked pretty good by themselves. Like what dragon looked bad to you?
I
Like,
don't know. It's maybe it's just the compositing
of the dragon on the shot.
Yeah.
maybe. But like some of the set extensions looked pretty good. It was mostly the green screening for me.
Green screening
There was a
was
lot
pretty
of
bad.
people on the back of dragons that like I don't know if they should have picked a different type of shot or if they should have. I don't know if it came down to like the post effects work, what happened, but for me, that was the parts that stood out the most as bad was the green screening.
Yeah.
Anything they did practically obviously looked pretty good. For me, all the dragons looked fine. They looked really good.
They look
Like,
good, and they also look visually distinct.
Yeah, I appreciated
Yeah.
that too. All right, so what about performance? Let's move over to Steven. What'd you give
Well, Steven
performance?
started.
Oh,
I
he
started
did.
last time,
Well, I'll
yeah.
keep going then.
Yeah, go ahead.
I also gave performance an 8.
Oh,
Oh.
interesting.
Okay.
I feel like everybody did really good. This show is a really well acted, piece of media. That's why you come to Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
I feel like what brought it back for me down from a higher score is just that like, and again, not to keep comparing it to Game of Thrones, but it's in the title, Game of Thrones House of Dragons. I felt like there was a lot more range in like what each person was conveying in the first show, where in this one, everybody is pretty much dour the whole way through. And there's not a whole lot of moments of joy, and there's not a whole lot of
That's plot.
well, I
No,
still feel like it's
but
the
that's
way they convey
the
even like
ability-
small scenes.
But see, I don't know if I would hold that against the actors because they can only do what they're given.
it
like
could
I
be
said,
the
plot.
writing.
Yeah.
It could be the writing. I mean, obviously the bullet points, the plot of what's happening.
Yeah.
But I just feel like there's a lot of scenes that it didn't have to be played as like dour as they were sometimes. And it's like stitched together between other scenes that did need to be dour, it works because it's like a tone. It's, but for me, there wasn't enough range. So the characters, like in terms of the actors and actresses, I think everybody did a great job, especially Viserys.
Yeah,
his name.
Patty
Constantine.
Constantine. I want to say teen every time, but it's a D. Dean.
Constantine.
I thought he did great.
Yeah, he
like
was
especially
fantastic.
watching
Phenomenal.
him melt like a candle throughout the whole as the series went on.
It's like at the beginning of every episode, you're like, ooh, I wonder what this the rot has taken away now.
What part of him is going to be gone now?
Right. So I thought he did great.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked the actresses that played both the young and older versions of Rhaenyra and Alicent.
Yeah.
I think I liked young Rhaenyra better than older Rhaenyra, and I think
too.
I liked older Alicent better than young Alicent.
Correct.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
Yeah. Steven, what'd you give it?
Well, I'm gonna go against the trend here. I'm actually gonna go a little higher.
Yeah.
I gave it a 9.
Yeah.
Cool.
I can't point to any one performance or moment where I'm like, that was perfect, that was stellar, right?
Yeah.
Viserys is definitely the highest, I think, for especially the range. Right? It's kind of like watching
the most awkward dinner, family dinner ever.
But even before then, it felt to me like I was watching Chevy Chase in like National Lampoon's
Oh boy.
being a king.
Yeah.
And I loved it because he had these moments where he's just like, I just want to be a dude and like just talk about fun things. And you want to talk,
be a dude.
and you want to talk
I want to
about,
work on my scale model.
yeah, like you want to talk about the war and
Been building this for decades.
Yeah. And like he constantly felt like this character where he didn't really want to be here. Like I didn't want to be king. And then he has these moments where he's just like, fine, I'll be king. You want me to be king? I'll be king. And then he comes down with it and he's like, ooh, yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
The both sides of the younger and the older on our two female main characters,
Protagonist and
they're
antagonist.
not. I don't even. Okay, there's a hard problem with this show, and I don't know who the protagonist is supposed to be.
Rhaenyra.
I think it's Rhaenyra.
It's definitely
to me.
Rhaenyra.
I know who they think it should be, but I look at this and I'm kind of like, I don't know.
Matt Smith. I don't know.
I don't. Yeah, like, I don't know.
So speaking of him, though, I thought he did really good.
did great.
He did great. Yeah.
Yeah, some of it's one of those things where he does a very good job at acting with his face
Yeah.
Yes.
to where you know exactly what he's thinking.
Which is hard to do because he has no eyebrows, but he still moves them somehow.
Well, and he gave off a really good vibe of that unpredictable, dangerous, like.
Mhm.
They definitely across
Short fuse.
the spectrum of Targaryens, we have a lot of that like incipient madness.
Yeah.
Where they will do things in the anger, the fire roars up.
Yeah.
And then they come down off that. I mean, the finale, we have that as well with Aemond, whose actor I don't know. But he did a great job with those segments.
I can't find
I'll pull it up.
Yeah.
Andrew, what's your score?
I also gave it a 9.
Yeah.
I honestly thought that even the kid actors did not even Rhaenyra and Alicent, but even the kid actors for their sons.
Their progeny.
Oh, man.
Honestly, I was curious if Ryan was going to come in here and be like, you know what? I hate kid actors.
No, I really don't. I hate specific kid actors.
But,
the ones that act like they're on the Disney Channel can go away. These kids do not act like that. They're real actors.
the guy that does play Aemond, which you'll find here in a second, he was fantastic.
Yeah.
He had such a just a hate for all this, like just all of her kids.
Yeah.
And
the interactions with the kids, both pre-time skip, question mark, because there's like 4 time skips in the show.
There's too many.
There are too many. We'll get there. And post-time skip, both sides of this one, they're cast well. They look like the aged-up version of these kids.
Yeah.
His name is Ewan Mitchell.
Ewan Mitchell.
Yeah.
Good for him.
But yeah, no, he did fantastic.
Yeah.
Like even the kid that plays Aegon, he was good.
I think I might like him better as a kid.
Rhaenyra's kids were really good too. I thought,
Yeah,
especially at this final episode, like you really finally got to. They gave them something else than just being kids.
Right. I was gonna say
Yeah.
that was kind of the thing that again is more plot, but it's like in Game of Thrones you get to see Arya and Sansa and all these kids,
and they get to interact with each other.
and
And
you
you
see
the
them
bond.
who they are in
Yeah.
the show. In this one, I felt like the kids were just kind of there as window dressing for
They
the
were.
longest until
Yeah.
like the end. I was gonna say about the actor that played the older version of
Aegon.
Aegon,
Yeah.
looked so much different from his like tween version. that it took me a minute to be like, wait.
I thought he, like, honestly,
I thought he lost the eye because that kid looks almost more like
he looks like the lead singer of My Chemical Romance.
He does. He really does.
when
I'm not okay.
like whenever he was getting crowned in the penultimate episode, and he lifts up the thing, I'm like, this is just an MCR concert.
This is just a rock band, yeah.
Oh man, has anybody done a video yet with the music? To put Black Parade on that?
But yeah, no, I mean, like, honestly, all the performances were great. I thought the castings were really perfect for all the aging up and everything.
They handled that really well.
Yeah.
I also really liked Princess Rhaenys.
Oh yeah. Viserys' sister.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of these names.
It's tough. Our matriarch.
Yes.
I think she's been great throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then another one for me was also Princess Helena.
She was there for like a minute.
But I don't care.
Oh, yeah,
she's such a Luna Lovegood style character.
She does have kind of Luna Lovegood
vibes going on.
Yeah.
And like especially at the awkward family dinner,
Mm-hmm.
every bit of that was perfect because it's kind of what you need in a sense of we need something to cut the tension.
Yeah.
And she does it well, but you can also still feel the tension rebuilding behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really appreciated that.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to the score of the score.
Score of the score. Andrew, you want to lead this one off?
Sure, I guess.
Wow.
I gave it a 7.
Okay. Fair.
I thought the music was honestly quite good for the most part.
Yeah.
I knocked it. I would have given it an 8, but I knocked it a point because they used the original Game of Thrones
just lazy.
theme song.
Just lazy.
Like you could you had the money here to compose something that was unique to the show, but also called back with leitmotifs and everything and pulled in pieces. Like you don't even have to. You can still end on the bump, like at the end, but you need something else in front of that that is different.
Build up into it, rise into this, and then as we hit me with the logo, the bump, it's like, oh yeah, let's go, we're on.
Yeah, like that's what you needed here, and we just didn't get that.
They may very well have had like a different song that they workshopped, and some bigwig exec was like, nope, we need the original.
Why would you just use the song that we have?
Just because there was already so much bad blood with the finale of Game of Thrones, they felt maybe that you really needed to be like, hey, this is
remember
still Game
us?
of Thrones.
This is Game of Thrones. You like Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Right? I gave it an 8. It was tough for me. I was clse between a 7 and an 8 multiple times. I think what pushed me over eventually was the song Fate of the Kingdom. That I think first appears. I think motifs of it appear throughout, but I think it first gets played in its full entirety in episode 9 when they're talking about overthrowing the king. And like it starts off with
good
this
tension music,
slow piano, and then like it builds into just this like I don't know. I felt like of all the songs in there's a lot of appropriately moody music and stuff like that. But that song specifically really conveys the idea of, oh my gosh, this coup is happening.
Mm-hmm.
It was going to happen with or without this, misinterpretation.
Yeah.
But now, like, they're using that as like the
smoking gun.
But it has this. I don't know. The way the song builds was like
it was good because it does play pretty much throughout the whole like cutting of like, hey, we're gonna go kind of like quotation marks imprison these people while we're making all of these plans and everything. It was good. It was definitely a good moment. Steven?
I give it an 8.
Yeah.
And honestly, I feel like basically their whole deduction is just the laziness of using the Game of Thrones theme is good. It will be stuck in my head forever now, just by default, because it's a good song. You could have done, there's something else you could have done.
I just wanted another
intro.
song to be stuck in my head.
Give me something else that is the signature House of the Dragon song.
And still end it with the final notes of the Game of Thrones theme song. But come on, like you could have done something.
Yeah, and it's such a glaring punch in the face when it hits the start of the episode, every episode, that I'm just like, skip intro.
Yeah.
Because it's a terrible intro.
Well, and it feels bad because I already hate skipping intros because I feel that they are a good window into world building and the show itself. And if you don't have a good one, then you're not capturing your audience immediately.
That intro is all the world building that went into the filming of episode 7 in HDR10. It's just gray and flat.
Well, and again, though, the original Game of Thrones, like that intro would change and have like little things that were like, oh, Easter eggs. So you were, for me at least, I watched the intro every time because I wanted to see what was being reflected.
It brings you into the world.
Yeah.
And it does world building for you and it's just freebie points basically for showrunners. And whenever you see showrunners don't utilize this, it's just such a bad thing. Like, come on, guys! Like you have us. We're already here. Give us something more.
Yeah. Yeah, but other than that, I feel like the music does a really good job of underscoring the tone, playing to the scene. Like there's no jarring moment of music versus what we're seeing on screen kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it also never overwhelmed or overpowered the dialogue, any of that. So
yeah. All right, moving on to the plot.
I'll lead off on plot.
Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts.
I gave it a 6.
Okay.
I did not like the plot.
That's not a valid critique.
Here's my critique. For me.
I didn't like it.
For me, it's not so much like the time skips I was fine with. I do feel like we could have maybe, this is my opinion, Steven. You can say,
you'll have your moment.
You'll have your moment. I feel like I did feel like I was missing stuff. That like there had to have been something interesting that happened in between there that we just skipped over. But for me, it didn't hang up as much as I thought it would. I was like, cool, fine, I can roll with this. For me, it was 100% the arcs of the characters or lack thereof, or the development of characters or lack thereof. It was none of the characters to me were given enough space for me to really, the characters that we got enough time to care about, I didn't care about because of either who they are as characters, what they did. And there were a lot of characters, like we were talking about the kids, where in comparison to the first Game of Thrones, where I knew who these kids were by episode 2, almost immediately, and I knew who I liked about the kids, why I didn't like certain kids, what their goals were, like, you know.
Just Joffrey, all of Joffrey.
Right, Joffrey. But then, again, a lot of the characters in this show felt like they were kind of at the outskirts for a large amount of it. And then towards the later few episodes, we start to get more and more nuance with some of them. Like the kids especially kind of came in. But I still feel like everything feels very small. Everything feels very compact compared to Game of Thrones, where like we're pretty much at King's Landing or at Dragonstone for the majority of the show. That's a lot of what's happening. And it feels like we're like, to me, it felt way too pared back compared to the first one, where it's like, it's as if you just followed House Lannister and we just stayed in King's Landing in season 1 of Game of Thrones instead of hopping around to Winterfell and going over to places. That, again, could be more of a fault of the source material, but at the end of the day, it did not do it for me. Like none of the political machinations to me were as good as in Game of Thrones. Like watching, you know, Varys and Littlefinger do their stuff in Game of Thrones was like a master class in espionage and deception and stuff. In this one, it felt, I don't know, just it didn't feel like there was as a deft of a hand at work behind the political machinations. Like they were still there, things were still happening. Yeah. But it didn't feel as, to me, as engaging as a viewer. Like I wasn't as on the edge of my seat to see like what's going to happen next, what are they going to do? I was just kind of going through the motions. Again, if I had to root for anybody, it would be Rhaenyra, but like more out of a like, who else am I going to root for? You know?
Yeah. They make it hard to really root for her a lot, honestly.
And, you know, I'm not against having like characters that are in a gray area or that are morally, you know, bankrupt. Like I loved Tyrion, even in the first season when he was just an alcoholic, mean guy, you know, but he was fun. Right. And like, I think that's the thing to me that's missing the most is none of the characters stood out and none of them had the level of like I knew Cersei was terrible and I hated her on so many levels, and my hate for her grew over the show, the first season.
Well, I think that's what you're supposed to do.
Right. Yeah. And I don't feel that hate towards anybody in this show. And then you have like, you know, Ned Stark, Arya Stark, Jon Snow, people I rooted for wholeheartedly in the first season. I have nobody I'm rooting for like that in this. And like Tyrion and like Khal Drogo and like all these other characters from Game of Thrones that like were very flawed characters, but I was rooting for in one way or if not rooting for, I at least wanted to see what they were going to do next. You know what I mean? Like that, like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens with XYZ. That never happened for me in this show.
Interesting.
Like, I never came to the couch going like, ooh, I can't wait to see what Alicent does. I was just like, all right, let's see what she does. And then it would happen and it would be like, cool, but nothing moved the needle for me like the original Game of Thrones did.
I never sat down and said, all right, let's see what Alicent's up to. I'd be like, let's see what that bee is up to.
Yeah. Okay, Steven?
So I gave plot a 7.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of similar things here that Ryan has said that I really kind of moved into my entertainment score and not so much here.
Yeah.
But I do think for the showrunners, it is a critical mistake to not have a Stark-esque character here where there's someone that we can really root for and we're sympathetic to, or a Tyrion-esque character to kind of fill in the space with some fun. And so, yeah,
Game of Thrones is supposed to be fun.
Well, it's not even that it's supposed to be fun. It's just
it was a fun show. I had a lot of fun with the first 5 seasons.
you need some, again, this is not how the world works. Everyone does not go around looking dour.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. I think that hurt them a lot in what they could do and how they could play off things. But for a plot itself, I object to the time skips, mostly because in one of the time skips, we just get Otto is back as the Hand. Why is he back? Don't know.
Well, so at the end of the funeral for someone, like
that person,
he is there at the funeral, and that was like right after the
other
clubfoot guy basically killed
the Hand,
kills his dad and his brother.
Yeah. Oh, that is his dad and his brother?
Yeah. That's why that was such a hardcore scene, was that like he basically burned the castle with his dad, who was the Hand, and his brother in it alive.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I
didn't know that they were related.
You didn't catch that?
No,
that dude's hardcore. But yeah, it's just one of these things where
Laris.
He really wanted to look at the queen's legs.
Feet
specifically.
Feet. That was that. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. That's borderline worth a whole point. Just in general, just that scene, was just like, man, why'd she take her slippers off? I don't understand what's. Wait a minute. Hold on. I have seen a lot of Game of Thrones brothel BS. I've drawn the line. Yeah. But mostly just because the parting of Viserys and Otto as the Hand was so, like, that was not a fixable thing. Like, the accusations at play and the line.
And then he's just back.
The line that Viserys drew of, like, literally, like, I'm going to hold, my grandson in my arms and say, oh, look, he's got his father's nose. Everybody knows it's not his.
Yeah.
But he's so committed to this line. There's no way Otto comes back as the Hand with Viserys that committed to that, because he's not going to let that be there. Not because Otto's plotting against him, but because Otto believes something that Viserys refuses to accept.
Yeah.
So that, to me, because that is what allows basically all of this political intrigue to happen, is that Otto just, somehow Otto returned, right? Like, killing me here, people, for everything good that happened. I don't need to be like, oh, it's been 4 years since I've seen you. So, by the way, Otto's Hand again, like, full stop, pump the brakes. This is massively important to the plot.
Yeah.
You got to show this. You can't just hand wave this at me.
And again, like, if that was something that was missing from the books, then I feel like they should have filled in the gap.
And they did a good job of filling in other gaps. Like, theoretically, I haven't read that book, but it's a history book with unreliable narratives that has, huge stretches of time and all this other.
Yeah.
They filled in tons of gaps. Like, you could have written something.
Yeah.
Anything. Like, he bribes his way back in. Cool, I'll accept it. Shows up and gives Viserys a new horse and spear to go hunt the boar, because, boy, he loves doing that. Boom, you're back in good read. Anything. Give me something.
Yeah.
I do want to throw in an addendum that I did, over the series, begin to more and more dislike Sir Criston Cole.
Oh, so you kind of wanted, like, initially you were like,
hard on
I was
him, right?
rooting for that guy.
Yeah,
I was like,
you're rooting for him, and then you're like, oh, this guy's
this guy's a piece of work.
Oh, yeah, weird dude.
He's got, you're going to talk about conflicted personality.
Yeah.
Andrew?
So I also gave it a 7, and I don't feel that I was actually too nice to it, because the time skips did kind of bother me, mostly just because it was jarring, because then you had to play mental catch up of like, okay, how long has it been?
Right.
And luckily sometimes there are pieces of dialogue in there that tell you how long it was.
Props to them for saying stuff like that, and not just giving us a little overlay, 10 years later or whatever. Like they did the effort there. I'll give them that.
So I think my biggest thing with this show is, and maybe it's just because I just was never invested in original Game of Thrones, and like, again, I really do feel that Game of Thrones was initially kind of HBO was just like, oh, look at all the stuff we can do because we don't have to worry about broadcast standards. And because of that, I didn't really care for any of the characters because it didn't really matter to me. Where these, I don't care about any of the characters here because none of them are likable. But I don't think you have to have likable characters to have a good story.
Not necessarily, no.
And
you can have someone who's likable
goes
for
a long
moment
way with me.
and they dip down.
And this is the thing is in Rings of Power also kind of fell into this problem for the first season that we just watched and reviewed, which you can go check out right now on our website.
Get it.
Spoilers Intended podcast.
There's the show right there.
Yeah.
But I really feel that this first season, because I know, Ryan, you did mention like the kids didn't really get a lot of time.
Yeah.
You didn't really get to meet any of them until pretty much later on the season because we have to get through all of the political machinations of how Alicent is and how Rhaenyra is and how their relationship has fallen apart.
We have to get the kids up to age, right? When we start Game of Thrones,
everyone's already of age.
And Jon and Bran, like these people are all basically the age they're going to be for the show, right? Like Arya ages a year or whatever. I don't know how. I don't remember the timeline.
Arya,
whatever. But like we have to get these children from the moment where we get to see them birthed on screen. Thank you, Game of Thrones. Please stop.
Yeah, please stop that.
Please stop.
But that's going to show up in a later score. Let me tell you.
But so this is kind of one of those things where I feel that the first season again is a whole lot of setup for what is actually going to be what the show is actually going to be about,
season
which
2.
is going to be season 2 and beyond.
I can see that.
And it's the same thing with Rings of Power and same thing with this, where they have to just get to a point to where we at least have an understanding of what these characters are, what their general motivations are, and who the main players are by the time season 2 starts, which is where the actual story is going to take place.
Yeah, and I'm not like so down on the show that I don't want to see where it goes or anything like that. But it does feel to me sometimes like, I don't know, it's like, I hope there's a point of doing this. Because a lot of times when you do a prequel, it's like, if this isn't as interesting as the thing we've already gotten, why are you doing
Why
it?
are we here?
Yeah.
No, I totally agree there.
Yeah, I am excited to see where it goes in season 2.
Okay, so
Speaking of.
Entertainment.
Entertainment.
Are you not entertained? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. Sure, why not?
Hit it off.
I gave it a 5.
Okay.
I really just don't like this kind of show.
Yeah.
I can appreciate it because I can understand like why people enjoy it, and the acting was very good. The final episode was it moved it from a 4 to a 5 for me because the final episode was quite good.
Yeah.
And I was actually invested in the characters, but I can give you 3 episodes out of 10 that I genuinely liked.
So what was it about the final episode you liked so much?
Just because you finally start seeing a lot of the pieces come together.
Things are happening.
And things are happening, and you finally see people making true mistakes.
Right.
Well, or making big decisions that are like,
throughout that episode, we had Rhaenyra, being the voice of reason, right? The calm, reasonable, and she's the queen. Like, they're not going to go to war unless she is behind this.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, then how do we get to, that's how we get to it. Okay.
Yeah, we just kill her son.
We're going to burn some stuff down now. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you guys, because I'll find more things to discuss, but basically I just don't really like this kind of show.
I'll jump in. I gave it a 6.
Yeah.
For opposite reasons of you, basically. Like, I do love this kind of show, and it wasn't good enough for me.
Okay.
Like, to me, I felt like I wanted, I guess, just to enjoy it more on every level. I felt like it was a step down from Game of Thrones.
Okay.
And I think that is completely summarized in the intro.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way you feel about the intro is how I feel about the entirety of the series.
Well, and I'll
Seriously.
definitely say this. Like, if I had to just give like the original Game of Thrones series a just an entertainment score, I'd probably give it a 2 or a 3, maybe.
Right. See,
like
I would
3
be
is
closer
generous.
Wow.
to like an 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, it's just it's everything that I liked about Game of Thrones, but less and not as good.
Yeah.
That's my problem with it overall. It's just like, I don't like any of the characters as much. I don't like the plot as much. I don't like the just anything about it as much as Game of Thrones. That's why I was saying earlier, like, when you're making these prequel shows, it's like, What's the point of this?
Yeah,
like, if
we
this
need to
isn't
have something.
The point is money.
Yeah, no. That's
Don't
why
say it. Don't say the
when I was
word.
saying I was leaning cynical earlier in the episode.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not fully over there. Like, I do think there is enough meat on the bone to have a show here. I am excited to see what happens in season 2.
Yeah.
But so far in season 1, nothing has been terrible. But my enjoyment of it was a 6. It was just like fine, but everything was scaled back from what I was expecting and what I wanted out of it. Steven?
So, before we started the finale, my entertainment was a 7 by a bare thread. The first 15 minutes of the finale, I was like, this is a 6. This is a hard 6. Stop. Like, I get it. We didn't have all the characters and the players on the field, so we had to give birth to multiple of them in the show. But, like, we had 4 childbirths on screen in 10 episodes. Stop, people. Please.
Yeah, I just didn't like that at all.
Just stop. But the course of the finale saved it, brought it back to a 7.
Yep.
So I didn't expect to be the highest entertainment score here.
So your entertainment score is like the stock market. It was just
Buy, sell.
Like every scene, he's like, nope, there's another mark.
When they lit up that table, my score went up a little bit.
I'm not gonna lie, something went up a little
Yeah,
bit.
the table was pretty cool.
That table was that was lit.
Oh,
Got it. But
impractical, but lit.
But yeah, I really like the second that in the finale, whenever Rhaenyra, sends off her kids, I'm like, this is already a big mistake.
Terrible
Why would
idea.
you
Oh
do
yeah,
this?
I was like, what are you doing?
And then the
Haven't you seen Game of Thrones?
and whenever they put a lot of emphasis on the younger kid going and doing his thing, I was like, oh, he is 100% dead.
So for me, for 1 second, I thought what they were going to do is the reverse. I thought this little kid was going to kill the eye patch kid and start the war out of like self-defense.
Yeah.
I really thought they were going that like to, swerve on us because I was like, I mean, obviously this kid with one eye who put like a jewel in there, I guess.
Yeah.
He's coming for an eye,
But I mean, they kind of foreshadowed that in a way, and I thought they were foreshadowing in a way back like episode, I don't know, 4, when Rhaenyra is on her like betrothal tour to find a suitor.
Yeah.
And the little kid just like stabs the bully.
Oh yeah.
Which I love that scene. That
was
cracked
great.
me
Yeah,
up.
that was funny.
The kid is just like had enough with this. What if we just go to war in front of the queen, the future queen?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they desperately need, if they really wanted to bring the show up, I think they need a sympathetic character. Because
because no one's really sympathetic right now.
There are definite moments in this show where I'm like, who do I care about here? Like, who am I actually genuinely worried for?
Yeah.
Nobody right now. Like, I know Viserys has to die. He's the only character I actually really cared about, and I know he's going to die.
Yeah, he's got the rot.
He's got the rot. Got the gangrene. But everybody else is just kind of like, you're all just kind of crap. Like, you're all crappy to each other. You're all crappy to yourself.
There also wasn't that many surprising deaths, I don't feel like. That like of people that we really cared about.
But do we need that?
No, but like I guess for me, like it's not the appeal of Game of Thrones, but there was definitely
I want to see that death on screen.
There was an element of like unease.
Ooh, I wonder who's going to die this episode.
It wasn't. I wonder. It was oh god, I hope so and so doesn't die. I hope so and so doesn't die.
But
like,
first
you
of
go
all,
into it nervous.
But first, before they can do that to you, if they have to make you be like, oh, I like so and so. Oh, I hope he doesn't die.
The
I hope he doesn't die.
Yeah.
Like we haven't gotten that style of character yet.
No, we haven't.
Or even like a Jaime Lannister or a Tyrion, someone who feels like they can kind of redeem themselves over time. We haven't got one of those
Hopefully
yet.
not Sir Criston. Please not Sir Criston.
Oh,
yes,
seriously,
irredeemable.
He's so weird.
He's such a nerd.
Him and Laris, that irredeemable. Also, this is totally irrelevant to everything, but and the most minor of nitpicks ever. But I really want to talk to Laris, have a sit down with him, and be like, bro, so you got 3 dudes out of jail, right? Yep, check mark. Got the plan down. Cool. They're confirmed murderers, thieves. They have up to no good. Yep, got that. Check mark. Cool. And you're gonna send them across the land to this place to set fire and burn. Yep, check. Yep. And they're gonna work together, right? Yep, check. And you're gonna pull their tongues out before they leave. Yes. They can't read or write, right? Yes. Do they know sign language? How are these people supposed to work with each other to set up this plot? How are they even supposed to travel the multiple days to get there? Like, how do they agree with each other when to stop and make camp?
I mean, you just hold it the stop hand. Like
This is one of those things where it's like, your plan's great, but dude, take their tongues after they do the deed.
I thought you
not
were going to say,
before.
like, they come
No.
back to report, did you do it? Oh, I didn't think this through. Give me a full report on what happened.
Write this down. Wait, you can't write?
Starts drawing shapes in the dirt. Didn't think this through.
It's a really simple and dumb thing. Just watching, I saw, I was like, this guy did not think this through at all. And they're just going to let it pass. And it's okay, but
Yeah.
killing me here.
All right. Well, so if you liked this show, what else should somebody check out? What do you think?
Game of Thrones.
I mean, I think that's the low-hanging fruit is Game of Thrones. But outside of Game of Thrones, do y'all have anything you think would fit someone that likes this show?
I don't watch these kind of shows. So
Yeah,
I have
nothing to go for.
what
I have
you-
a couple.
Yeah,
I have not watched these shows.
This may jog my memory.
Yeah.
I have not watched these shows, so
Okay.
full disclosure. But these are shows that have been on my radar to try to check out because
Oh,
they
actually,
are.
I do have one. Continue.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
The Last Kingdom, which is a Netflix show.
Okay.
Sure.
And Vikings and Vikings Valhalla, which is a
Okay.
spinoff of the Viking show. I have heard that those are very good shows and that they are, if you like Game of Thrones, again,
Yes.
minus the there's no dragons, there's no White Walkers.
Yeah.
You know, if you're into the
It's less fantasy and more.
yeah.
The Vikings, I know a lot of people were big on that show
Mhm.
post Game of Thrones because it was kind of like the newest. Oh, it's a Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like now we have the roguelike, but we have a Game of Thrones like, right?
Yeah.
You know,
A
Yeah.
Thrones like.
Thrones like.
What was yours?
So I actually have two because the Vikings also reminded me. They're both anime. Go figure,
Oh,
right?
shocking.
No.
Never.
It's unknown.
Who are you?
So the 1990s series of Berserk.
Okay, yeah,
animation.
that fits.
Yeah. It is. It's not more political machinations, but it does exist in there. But it is a dark fantasy.
It's very gory, right?
Very gory.
There's a lot of blood for basically the first 24 episodes, and then the 25th and 26th episodes are absurdly brutal.
I thought you were going to say it tapers off.
Yeah, no,
They ramp it up.
And when I say absurdly brutal, there is some incredibly graphic scenes.
How many
that-
childbirths happen?
0.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Well,
But-
if you're a fan of House of Dragons, I don't know if you can go through with it.
Yeah,
We need at least
I'm a-
one childbirth.
If you're a
per-
fan of childbirth, you gotta throw that in there. No.
But yeah, so I would definitely recommend that one. It's probably available on Crunchyroll. Now, there are a bunch of other Berserk series out there. Don't watch the one from 2016.
Mm.
It is
that the one that was
CGI
on
and terrible.
Netflix?
Yeah,
Maybe,
I've seen that, and
the
it's
trailer
not.
Yeah.
for it.
not great.
So really, just the OG Berserk
Yeah,
from the
mhm.
90s. Okay.
So then you also have this is a more modern or recent anime series called Vinland Saga, which is about Vikings.
I've seen that one pop up a lot in my Netflix.
and
but I haven't
this is
checked it
more
out.
just general war, but it has it's generally pretty realistic for kind of
anime
the time
standards.
period. yeah, for anime standards, and it's just a good revenge story.
Mm.
And I think there's a second season coming out soon, as far as I know. But its first season is like 26 episodes, and it's really good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Steven, you got anything?
I sure don't.
That's all
because
good.
I didn't watch Game of Thrones,
Mm-hmm.
and I watched this because I was obligated to. And
Legally,
I'm
our
here
lawyer-
because they made me.
Our lawyer told us we had to.
I'm here so I don't get fined. But throughout it, I was actually kind of surprised. Like, man, do I care about this? Man, I'm gonna watch season 2 on my own now. Like,
I'm sure that there are a couple other shows that I've seen that would fit this bill, and I'm sure someone will tell me after they hear this episode, they're like, "Why didn't you recommend that?" And I'm like, "You're right. That's a good question. I don't know."
Yeah.
But it's if you
I feel like, unfortunately, though, a lot of high budget fantasy TV is rare.
it is
it is very rare.
The Witcher series on Netflix is
Witcher,
very good.
yeah, Witcher's probably
but
good.
I don't
one.
know that it necessarily
It's not an analog for this.
is an analog for this.
No, it's not.
But there's a couple of different Netflix fantasy series that I think could work. Like there's that Shadow and Bone. There's one that's
Yeah, and they kind of took the shotgun approach, right? To the,
Yeah.
everybody loved Game of Thrones. Just any fantasy, I don't care. Put it in and shoot it out.
yeah. It's
And
like Netflix was
Wheel of Time, get it on there, Amazon. Let's go.
do it.
Do it. Suffered a little bit for
Yeah.
that.
But I would not
attitude.
recommend Rings of Power if you like this
No.
necessarily.
it's apples to oranges.
Yeah.
They are two completely different shows. I'm
I
sad
mean,
that people
pomegranates
try.
to nuts.
I'm sad that people try and compare them because they are two very different shows.
They are
and
very
very
different.
different styles.
Yeah, the only comparisons that
is
work
that they came out at the
is
same
the fact
time.
that they came out at the same time. you
And
know,
they're both under the umbrella of fantasy.
they're fantasy and they're direct competition, right?
Sure.
In the sense of, this is Bezos's Game of Thrones and this is, whatever. But like it's not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Final thoughts, season 2, expectations?
I mean, I did like the last shot where
It was
she
a good
turns
shot.
around and she's mad.
Oh,
yeah.
You know, it was kind of like,
You knew it was coming.
and I knew it was coming, so it didn't really like shock me necessarily.
I do
but,
want to
like,
know how Damon found out.
That's all. There was a
Well-
little bit of question there of like,
How
did
did
this happen
anyone
over
find
the
out?
I mean,
sea?
well-
Did they find him washed up?
Or it's
somewhere?
possible that they could. Well, no, but they were above the clouds, so they couldn't. Like the people down in the. So that either means that someone found the dragon,
Yeah.
like in the ocean.
Right, which
Or
is probably
That's
more
probably
likely.
the most
So
realistic.
the simplest assumption here is, right, we send a messenger. Messenger doesn't return. Messenger is important to us. We have other people who have dragons who can go out and scour.
That is true.
Is he injured, lost? Does he need help? And
Yeah.
then we find, pieces of the dragon up on the beach or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, now the assumption is obvious as to what happened,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, the pieces looked like they were bitten through by a giant dragon.
or it's possible that Aemon just fessed up.
Yeah,
Came by
And-
Raven.
Yeah, and and just
I
told.
got you, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's not a
but I mean,
fess
like
up.
clearly, like whenever that happened, he did not want to kill him.
Yeah,
He
I
just
thought that was an interesting
he wanted
twist.
to
where
Yeah.
torment him.
Yeah. He had the hate for it, but he didn't want to.
When
he
you-
didn't want to like murder him.
you hear both of them trying to get their dragons to behave.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
ooh, this is-
Ruh-roh.
yeah. The second that he was like, "Why won't you listen to me?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, he's
Yep.
totally
Oh, yeah.
Problems.
100%."
Game over. Yeah.
Well, I mean, as soon as he landed in the courtyard and they did the lightning flash and the big dragon was back, which one, the scales involved here are tremendous.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
And two, it's just like, oh, you are in so much trouble here.
yeah, and there's nothing he can do
I
about
would
it.
have
you're
got back
committed.
on my dragon and been like, yeah, they didn't answer, Mom. Weird.
no
Nobody was there.
one answered the door.
I think the address was wrong on this scroll you gave me.
Yeah,
I do think I'm more excited to see what happens in season 2.
after this
Then-
finale, 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
after
this
the
is wheels
finale.
come off the bus here. Like, it's on
Yeah.
at this point.
I hope we can get. I don't think this show is so, like, for me who didn't
Yeah,
enjoy
far
it a ton,
gone.
so far gone that it's irredeemable.
Yeah.
I just think they have a lot of correcting to do in season 2 to make me like really get in there.
Yeah.
and
Ryan's up
enjoy
here.
it.
Apologize. Dragon
Yeah,
v.
that's
Dragon.
exactly what they need.
Apologize.
Apologize.
Yeah,
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for us. Thanks for listening. Remember, as always, we have a Patreon where you can get a lot of bonus episodes and a lot
Just
of
$1.
content for just $1 a month.
guaranteed one per month.
Guaranteed, stamped right on the front of the box.
Yeah,
And then sometimes we upload more than one a month. It just depends on,
possible, yeah.
So far,
what's
it's
going
not
on.
sometimes. So far, it's always.
Oh.
Hey.
We also have a Discord. We
Yep.
like getting on there and talking to people about things related to the episodes and things that aren't, like what we're playing, what we're watching that we're not going to review, just
Yep.
general
Or
discussion.
that might suddenly become a review because
Yeah.
everyone's watching it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And speaking of reviews, if you can't support us at $1 a month, we would love it
Hey.
if you could.
good segue.
Yeah, thanks for
Bravo.
interrupting it. Yeah, that's great. We would love it if you could leave us a review on your podcast service of choice. It doesn't matter what.
Preferably
iTunes. Yeah. Preferably iTunes. Because iTunes and their almighty algorithm bubbles up a lot of podcast listeners, and we want to get in front of more ears. Speaking of, if you see us posting something on social, like it, share it.
Comment.
Tell your mom, tell your grandma about this show. You know your grandma watches House of the Dragon. You know she wants to know what 3 nerds think about it. All right, until next time, I'm Ryan.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Steven.
And as always, every spoiler was intended. Okay, so before we get into everything, 1 second. What is our overall score?
Oh, we don't know. That's it. Great.
I was about to barrel into that section, and I remembered as I was flying my dragon in the sky, I
You're
had
like,
nowhere to
"Huh,
land.
How about that? Yeah.